Thank you. God bless you. Before I say a word, even before I express my gratitude to our eloquent governor, let me acknowledge some members of the clergy that are here and ask them to stand in for all the other members of the clergy who are here and all the rest of you who pray now and then, because I need all the help I can get. So I want to acknowledge some dear friends. There's one man here who has served in many capacities in government, but he's also a clergyman. He's a dear friend of mine. We were classmates a very long time ago at Howard University. And I called him once in order to express my concern for his welfare, and he had some personal difficulties, and I said to him, gee, Andy, I wish you well. And he said, Dave, don't worry. God doesn't put any more on you than you can bear. My friend, Ambassador Andrew Young, I'm delighted he's with us. There's another man here who happens to be a member of the clergy, but he's known well to everyone here. He is someone I was proud to stand with in 1984 and again in 1988. He's a man who forced other candidates in a national campaign to discuss some of those problems that were close to the hearts of many of us, the plight of Haitian refugees, apartheid in South Africa, and as today we see Haiti, the circumstances changing for the better, and as we see Nelson Mandela sitting across the table from de Klerk about to bring freedom to black South Africa, I know he is responsible to a great degree. My friend, the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. There's one young man here who has two fathers. I'm one father, and the other father is the Rabbi Irvin Block, and Rabbi Block is here. God bless you. And my pastor is here. Canon Fred Williams. Father Williams, where are you? Someplace. Thank you. I know that everyone up here has already been introduced, but you will forgive me if I quickly call some names. Senator Lautenberg, thanks for coming across the river. Good friend. And Alan Hevesy, who's way down at the end there, who's doing quite well. And Elizabeth Holtzman, who is here as well, our city controller. And from the Congress, there are, one, of course, is my brother. And you all will understand, he truly is my brother. As a matter of fact, his mother now accepts that she's my mother too, because my mother is gone. And so she is, it's all right. And my brother is here with us. I love him, I truly love him. Congressman Charles Rangel. And especially on those days, but not limited to those days, but especially on those days when I'm known as David Martinez Dinkins, not only then, but at other times as well, another brother of mine, a dear friend, he has stood with me always, Jose Serrano. Where are you? Where are you? And the first Puerto Rican woman to serve in our House of Representatives, Nydia Velázquez. Because of a Republican rule that vacuumed jobs out of our city and turned our people out onto the street like the leavings of a Republican Party dinner. After 12 years of a Republican rule that wanted to banish government from our lives, unless you happen to be a pregnant woman. And after 12 long, hard years, the people of this nation elected Bill Clinton as President of the United States. The people of this nation said, let's disavow the broken politics of blame and shame, the bankrupt Reaganomics of debt and regret. Instead of mourning the good old days that never were, let's chase and embrace the better days ahead. The people said, let's change our tune from Old Lang Syne to Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow. So we threw Rudolph's heroes out of the White House. And let me tell you, we gained real leaders and real partners on the road to American redemption. President William Jefferson Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. They know that if government isn't part of the solution, it's part of the problem. And that's a choice we face in New York in 1993. This is an election about choices, about differences, about whether we move forward or turn back. So let me ask you, should New York City turn back? Should New York City move forward? Well, after opening neighborhood health care centers across the city, after opening libraries 6 days a week for the first time since 1947, after launching the largest recycling program in the country, and building more affordable housing than the entire federal government, do you think we should now reward the New York bashing, program trashing agenda of Ronald Reagan, George Bush, and Rudolph Giuliani? So it's time to focus on the real choices in this election. Bill Clinton believes that health care should be a right and not a privilege, and so do I. Bill Clinton believes that we can slash the bureaucracy, lower the cost, and improve the quality all at the same time, and so do I. Bill Clinton knows that every dollar we spend on prevention saves thousands of dollars in cure, and so do I. That's what we're doing in New York City with a program called Communicare, transforming overburdened, bureaucratic health clinics into full family health centers, saving money and saving lives. We're taking our people out of the emergency rooms and giving them real family doctors, doctors who know their needs and know their names as well. And with Bill Clinton's leadership, we'll do even more for the 1.5 million New Yorkers struggling without health insurance, and so many others who are afraid to lose their insurance. So I ask you to stand with me and my bride Joyce as we stand with Bill and Hillary Clinton to fight for the health insurance we need and we demand. You see, President Clinton and I are Democrats. We belong to the party of affordable health care, the party of Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare. We believe in a right to care and treatment. We reject the ravages of the Reagan-Bush years, when health was just another line on a grim list of budget cuts, when infant mortality surged, when children went without vaccinations and nutrition, when New York City spent more money to fight tuberculosis than the whole federal government nationwide, when America was a laughingstock of the healthy nations of the world. The Republican candidate for mayor shares that right-wing approach. He was part of the Reagan team that tried to cut the disabled off Social Security. His idea of health care reform is selling off public hospitals to the highest bidder, like used bicycles at a suburban garage sale. And if that means some people have to go without health care, that's fine with him. And if his voice is now absent from the debate on national health care, don't worry. By the time this campaign is over, he will have taken several different positions. So you see, there are real substantive differences in this election, and it's time to focus on those differences. I have a plan to create more jobs, to put even more police on the beat and reduce crime even further, to put children first in our schools, and tomorrow I will unveil my health care plan to make our city the health capital of the world. while my Republican opponent campaigns for the office of warden instead of the office of mayor. While he prosecutes a policy of jail, more jail, and further jail, a policy that says it's better to arrest than to invest. We have put 6,000 more cops on the beat, and we've done what our opponent couldn't do in a lifetime as a prosecutor. We have reduced crime. But we're still not satisfied. By no means are we satisfied, because I know that Patrick Daly in Red Hook is just as dead, and Alan Winslow killed in Prospect Park by youngsters 14, 16 years old to steal his bicycle. He is gone nonetheless. And I know that if any one of you, anyone here, if you have a friend or relative of you were a victim of a crime, these statistics don't mean a thing. I understand that. But the fact is, crime is down. But we're going to do more. We're going to put a police officer in every public school. And we're going to merge our 3 police departments into one crime-fighting super agency. And we'll work with the president to expand community policing throughout our city and throughout the nation. While my Republican opponent delivered eulogies for a city he found embarrassing, while he was wringing his hands in mock relief at the wake for a city he says only he can resurrect, we saved and created jobs. We froze taxes across the board and reduced some others. We helped small business. And we have a plan to create 110,000 new jobs over the next 4 years. A plan to strengthen our middle class and create a new middle class. Because I envision a city in which a young woman from Haiti or the Dominican Republic can become a captain of industry. A city in which an immigrant from Leningrad or Dublin can become a titan of finance. A city in which a son of a grocery store owner from Jamaica, Queens can become governor. And a city where the son of an African-American barber and a domestic from Harlem can become mayor. And a city that launches the presidency of a man from Hope, Arkansas. Now, the Republican candidate, on the other hand, wants us to pledge our votes and our lives and our future to his so-called job creation plan. 1.5 pages of primal promises and nursery rhymes. Fashioned in a focus group and destined for disaster. And the next time someone asks you how our city lost jobs, ask Rudolph Giuliani for the home phone numbers of Ronald Reagan and George Bush. And how about education? How about education? My Republican opponent likes school board politics and bureaucracy so much, he thinks every borough should have one. Of course, that means 5 times as many political patronage jobs for his political bosses, more jobs for Boss Garth, more jobs for Boss Harding, who will then tell you with a straight face that it's really reform government. I have a plan that disbands the bureaucracy rather than expanding it. A plan that puts real control into the hands of parents and teachers and principals. A plan that puts our children first. The Republican candidate models himself so closely after Ronald Reagan, he even joined the Actors Union 3 years ago. But I say at least Ronald Reagan knew how to act. You see, we know who has spent the last 4 years on the firing line fighting for the hopes of 8 million New Yorkers, and who has spent the last 4 years explaining his own angry outbursts. We know where we stand, and we know where our Republican opponent stands, anywhere and everywhere he can. To him, pro-choice means choosing a different position every day. To him, economic opportunity means evicting the homeless. Bill Clinton and Mario Cuomo and I believe in a very different philosophy, a philosophy which says it's not who you bring down, it's who you lift up. I'm proud to be a member of the party of Mario Cuomo and Pat Moynihan, the party of Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, and Bill and Hillary Clinton. And I'm proud to belong to the party of Ruth Messinger and Nydia Velázquez, the party of my running mate Mark Green, the next public advocate of the city of New York, the party of Jesse Jackson and John Lindsay and Abe Beame. And I'd much rather belong to our party than the party of Reagan, Bush, and Giuliani, the party of Helms and Hoover, the party of Buchanan and Buckley, the party of Graham and Gingrich. So let us raise our sights and believe in the power of the future, because the things that unite us are stronger than the things that divide us, because we believe in one New York City with one New York future, because we've already proven that you don't have to be loud to be strong. And you don't have to be boastful to be effective, because New Yorkers know that you cannot arrest your way to success in this city, and that yesterday can never be as good as tomorrow in an ever-changing, ever-improving city like ours. Let us believe in the courage of compassion, and let us have the courage to stand by real change. Let us work together and walk together and join hands and hearts together in the march toward jobs and justice and victory. Let us march with President Clinton and Governor Cuomo and Senator Moynihan, providing real solutions for the real problems of real New Yorkers. And so let the word go out from here about what we have done and what we shall do, about choices we have made and choices we shall make, about building one New York City, about summoning one New York future, hearts and hands and minds joined in battle for the soul of our city. My friends, join me in welcoming the man who is restoring what my grandmother called the promise of America. Join me in welcoming the man who is proving every day that the promise of America is not the privilege of generations past, but the birthright of generations to come. Join me in welcoming a friend of all New Yorkers. I present to you a good and caring man, the 42nd President of the United States, William Jefferson Clinton.
Give him another hand. It was great. Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Dinkins, Senator Moynihan, Governor and Mrs. Cuomo, distinguished leaders of this magnificent city, and other distinguished head table guests. You know, when I do a speech, because sometimes, as you will remember, I'm a little long-winded, my acute advisors always say, now, Mr. President, imagine what you want the headline to be. You know, what is the headline? I think I've already heard the headline. The headline is, the mayor would very much like to have his job for 4 more years, and we ought to give it to him. I always love to come to New York, but I certainly would have come here tonight just to listen to my Senate Finance Committee chair and your brilliant governor and the mayor give these speeches. And now I feel like I did the night I gave my first speech in public life in January of 1977 at the Pine Bluff Rotary Banquet. It started at 6:30. There were 500 people there. Everybody in the whole place was introduced except 3 people. They went home mad. And kind of like Dave did. And I got introduced at 9:45. And the guy that was introducing me was the only person in the crowd more nervous than I was. And so he looked, everybody got gotten awards and the whole deal had gone on. And the first words out of his mouth were, you know, we could stop here and have had a very nice evening. And that's kind of how I feel. It is wonderful to be back in New York. Wonderful to be here with all of you, and wonderful to be here on behalf of Mayor Dinkins. I do want to thank publicly in this city, I think for the first time I've had a chance to do it, Mario Cuomo for giving the finest speech at the 1992 Democratic Convention, nominating me for president. And I want to thank let him go. You know, actually, I had something to say about that. It's too bad they're going to miss it, but I do want to thank Senator Moynihan. I want all of you to remember what he said tonight, because he has done a magnificent job as the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here tonight, because if he hadn't crafted a budget we could pass with that great landslide in the Congress, I'd be home worrying about something else, and David Dinkins wouldn't want me here. So I thank you, Pat Moynihan, for doing a great job for New York and for that. There's a lot of talk here tonight about the Democratic Party, and I want to tell you that I'm a Democrat by heritage, by instinct, by conviction, but I also wanted to be a part of a party that could change this country and in the process, if necessary, change itself. Franklin Roosevelt revolutionized this country by committing himself to bold, persistent experimentation in a time of change. And a lot of people up here can tell you that I'm going around all the time just asking people for new ideas. Reverend Jackson came to see me the other day, and I pulled him off in the corner and tried to pick his brain about some new things we could do to create jobs. I called Andrew Young in a distant land, which I'm having a good time, and asked him to help me convince America to have an expansionist view of trade and how it could be used to create jobs. I do that a lot, and I listen a lot, and I tell you, my friends, it is very important that tonight we be for David Dinkins, not just for all our yesterdays, but most importantly, for all our tomorrows. And just once in a while, I forget what this business is all about, and then something will happen in the flash of an eye and bring it all back home again. You know, we passed the family leave law in Congress, and I signed it instead of vetoing it a few months ago. And I read a column the other day that said, you know, the president's up there passing laws, the family leave law, the earned income tax credit. What does that mean to ordinary people? People can't identify with it. Well, let me tell you what happened to me today. I got up this morning and I went for my customary jog on Sunday morning. And when I came back to the White House, I entered through the ground floor as I normally do, and I looked up, and there was a family there touring the White House on Sunday morning, a very unusual occurrence. And the woman who was giving them the tour said, "Mr. President, this is a family with 3 children. One of these children is desperately ill and was in the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and her wish was to come to the White House for a tour and to see you." So I went over and I shook hands with the little girl, and I talked to her for quite a while, and her sisters and her parents. And then I went up and got ready to leave to come up here and went back to see him and was taking the picture. And as I walked off, that young girl's father grabbed me by the arm, and he said, "You know, my daughter may not make it, but I've had some very important time with her because of that family leave law. And if it hadn't passed, I couldn't have taken off work. They would have taken my job away from me, and I want you to know what it has done." And today, the mayor and I went to Queens with Clara Shulman and Tom Manton and Gary Ackerman and a number of the other members of Congress who are here. And we listened to people talk about the changes that still need to come. Talking about, like, this is the United States, you know. We're supposed to be the leader of the world. It's the end of the Cold War. I'm going to go to the UN tomorrow, and people will say, "There's America, the only superpower." America's not only the only superpower, it's got the 3rd worst immunization rate in the Western Hemisphere, and is the only major country that still can't figure out how to give affordable health care to all of its citizens. And I heard those stories today in Queens. That may sound like rhetoric here at a speech tonight, but in that diner in Queens today, which I visited, running in the Democratic primary in New York, there were people talking about their lives, their jobs, their businesses going broke. Why were they paying 3 and 4 times the national average for health insurance? Why did they lose their health insurance? Because they got sick. That's what they bought the health insurance for. And on and on and on. And it reminded me again of why we are in this business. We are here because we hope that if we work together and we work hard and we are smart, that somehow we can enable people to live up to the fullest of their God-given potential and rebuild this fragile American community of ours. That's why I ran for president, and that's why I came here for David Dinkins tonight. You know, most of this has already been said, but I left my speech over there. I'm just sort of talking from the heart tonight, and besides that, I'll be briefer if I do that. But I was thinking to myself on the way up here today, why do you really believe this man should be reelected? And there are basically 3 reasons I really believe it. Number one, you've already heard. Under very difficult circumstances, he's made you a good mayor. He has been a good mayor. I've heard all these stories about New York's financial problems for years. All I know is under difficult circumstances with no help from Washington, you have produced 4 budgets and improved your bond rating, and that counts for something. I was so proud to hear you clap for something that really, to me, is what government's all about, when the mayor talked about leaving the libraries open 6 days a week. That's a big deal, and not very many cities do it. He started a health care program which is consistent with what we're trying to do in Washington, not only to provide coverage for people, but to guarantee access to people who need it through public health clinics that give primary and preventive services, not just expensive emergency care when it's too late and people are already sick. And anybody can talk tough about crime. And almost every American, I want to be clear about this, almost every American desperately now is worried about the insecurity of life, the fragility of life in all of our cities and our small towns and our rural areas. So I say this not against anybody else, but it is simply a fact that your mayor, beginning with the man who is now my drug czar, who used to be your chief of police, started this community policing program to put more police on the street, in the neighborhood, knowing their friends and neighbors, to deploy them in a different and smarter way. And it is simply true that now, for 2 years in a row, in the 7 major categories the FBI keeps, New York is one of the few cities in America that has had a decline in the crime rate. That should be rewarded. Are you going to punish a person for producing the results you say you want? So I say to you, I was always worried that I never would quite fit in modern politics, which is so much television in 30 seconds and soundbite and look macho whether you are or not and all that sort of stuff. I hired out to do things, and here's a guy who's done things, and I came up here to say, well done. I think you ought to be rewarded. The second thing I want to say to you is that the truth is that all of us who do a good job should not on that account alone be reelected, because that's what you paid us to do. So if you do a good job, it really only counts if it's an indication that you will do another one if you get another term. And that's why I liked all the energy he put out tonight. He plainly wants to do it all over again in the worst way, and that's important. But secondly, I have reviewed the mayor's ideas. He gave me a whole list of things today I could do to help New York fulfill its potential. This jobs program is a good program. And not only that, it is consistent with what we are doing in defense conversion, in technology policy, in developing community financing institutions, in working with Congressman Rangel for the empowerment zones to get capital, private capital, back into distressed areas. It will work. So you really want in the next 4 years to have someone who will be doing things that fit with what's happening in Washington. Otherwise, why'd you vote for me in the first place if I can't help you? And the last thing I'd like to say is I think you ought to vote for him because he really does believe that we have to find strength and peace and harmony in our diversity. That we cannot become what we ought to be by being divided against one another. And I think that is maybe the most important thing of all. This has been 2 incredible weeks for me. I'm going to the UN tomorrow, it's a bookend of that incredible day, Monday 2 weeks ago, when Ishaq Rabin and Yasser Arafat shook hands and riveted the world. And I ask you, think of it. If after all the decades of fighting each other, they finally came to the conclusion that peace in their land that they love and a normal, decent future for the children of their people required them to seek some harmony, some accommodation, some working together. And when they shook hands, it was so electric that no one in the world thought that that was an act of weakness. It was instead an act of strength. Can we not learn this lesson in our multi-ethnic cities? Can we not see that across the lines of race and religion, those people who believe in family, those people who believe in work, those people who believe in putting their children first, those people who never violate the law and always pay their taxes and always show up for the basic things in life, have more in common than they do separating themselves, and they have to learn to vote across their racial lines, to vote across their religious lines, to reach out and make alliances that will enable us to live together. If you want to deal with the crime problems, and I do, if you want to pass a bill making illegal assault weapons so they don't get in the hands of teenagers, and I do. If you want If you want to pass this health care reform bill and make it a right for all Americans, it can never be taken away, and I do, don't we have to begin by getting the family of this country together, the people who have the same values and have the same hopes for their children, and say, we can do this together? You know, let's be candid. I looked, on the way up here, I said to myself, why has Dinkins got a race? I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying this. I said to him, I read the record, and then I actually read some of his position papers, something I bet you haven't done, some of you. And I thought about how it would fit. And I know him personally inside, and I said, why has this guy got a hard race? Let's face it. There are two reasons, I think. One is he doesn't give enough speeches like the one he gave here tonight. Because he is a humble man in an age that values self-promotion. Right? Because he is a quietly tough man in an age that values loud and piercing rhetoric. And to be fair, it is sometimes necessary because so many of us are caught in the blur of events and the frustration of our times. It is a style thing, folks. Don't get the style confused with the substance. He's got the substance. And the second reason is that too many of us are still too unwilling to vote for people who are different than we are. And this is not as simple as overt racism. That is not anything I would charge to anybody who doesn't vote for David Dinkins or Bill Clinton or anybody else. It's not that simple. It is this deep-seated reluctance we have against all our better judgments to reach out across these lines. It is not as simple as overt racism. It is this inability to take that sort of leap of faith, to believe that people who look different than we are really are more like us, and some people who look just like us but don't share our values or our interests or our conduct. Now, this is a big deal to me. I would not be here tonight. I would never have been reelected governor of Arkansas in 1982. I would not have been elected president of the United States through all those tough primaries if it hadn't been for African American and Hispanic voters and Asian voters, people who were different from me voting for me. I wouldn't be here. And so, look, so I read in the paper about the demographics of the Dinkins vote, and there will be some differences just because people think differently ideologically. But I want to remind you that David Dinkins, as was reminded to me tonight, when the Scud missiles were falling on Israel, went to Israel. He wants to represent all the people of New York. Look who he had introduce him and be a part of this program tonight. This is a big deal, folks. This is not just New York. This is LA, and this is rural South. This is every place. We are being tested. We are going through a time of profound change, and we right now don't have the sense of personal security to make the changes we need to make. We need more confidence in ourselves and confidence that we can meet all these challenges that are out there, and confidence that the 21st century will also be an American century. And in order to do it, we have to get our act together so we can feel good about the people we elect. We have to make our streets safer, our families stronger. We have to make all these economic changes, but we first must be more secure. I ask you, think about the handshake between Rabin and Arafat. Think about what it means for the future of the Middle East if we can keep it going. And then ask yourselves, this man who has a good record, who has a good plan, who has a good heart, has earned the right to your vote, and you ought to make sure he gets it and is returned to City Hall. Thank you, and God bless you.
In my haste to introduce everybody in the room, I failed to acknowledge Congressman George Hochbruckner, and I apologize, and a very dear friend from the Bronx, Congressman Elliot Engel. I'm so sorry, forgive me. Folks, I got to tell you, they laid out the map for tonight, and they took me this far. I don't know what happens next, but I can tell you, for me, it does not get better than this. I am so grateful to all of you. God bless you. Keep the faith.